I believe that she is methodical enough to know exactly what she was doing. She waited for the opportunity to present itself, and I believe she went in and decided that's the time to take him for her own greed, her own desire.
This grandmother is already accused of killing one child, then burning his body with a welding torch. Now, Houston police are looking into the possibility she is a serial predator. Good evening. I'm Melinda Spalding.
And I'm Mike Barajas. Police say that Mona Nelson acted alone when she kidnapped and killed 12-year-old Jonathan Foster. Now, Mona Nelson has not confessed to his murder, only to getting rid of the child's body. Fox 26's Sally McDonald is live in the newsroom with new information on who Nelson says really killed the child. Sally?
Yeah, activist Quanell X met with Nelson this afternoon. She's been charged with capital murder, but Quanell doesn't see a cold-blooded killer. Instead, a mom and grandma who couldn't possibly be the only one involved. Mona Nelson often did maintenance work at apartment complexes on Oak Street in Northwest Houston. The kids around here called her Mama. Then on Christmas Eve, police say Nelson snatched and killed one of them.
I know her. She's tough enough to do it by herself because she does sheetrock work and all that, but I just don't, there's no reason big enough in this world to take an innocent life.
The break in the case came when surveillance cameras on a business captured Nelson dumping the charred remains of a child in a ditch. The body turned out to be Jonathan Foster's.
I would love to have and be able to tell you that there is what the motive is. Right now there's one person that knows what the motive is, and unfortunately we don't have it.
Activist Quanell X spoke with Nelson on Thursday and doesn't believe she acted alone.
She said that it was the stepfather, David, that paid her the money to dispose of a container that he gave her.
Throughout the week, detectives have questioned Jonathan's stepdad, mom, and babysitter.
The case is done. The case is over with. We have nothing else to say.
Police are confident Nelson planned the killing on her own.
She is a cold, soulless murderer who showed an absolute lack of remorse in taking the life of Jonathan Foster.
At Nelson's garage apartment, detectives say they stumbled onto a wealth of evidence, including burned carpet, twine found around Jonathan's hands, and welding torches police believe Nelson used after she killed him. The woman had only recently met Jonathan's family.
She knew them for the past couple of weeks, and what they primarily was doing was getting high together, drinking together, and hanging out together. So I believe that this child was really a victim of his living circumstances, and I believe that Miss Nelson did play a role in what has happened to this child, but I believe her role is disposing of the body.
Police admit it's hard to believe a 44-year-old woman would suddenly choose to kidnap, kill, and burn the body of a child. That's why they don't think it's a first.
Do I believe she's done it before? Yeah, I do. I don't believe she began and ended with the abduction of Jonathan Foster. I don't.
And that is why police tell us they'll be looking into other unsolved murder cases. Mona Nelson's criminal past dates back to 1984 when she went to prison for aggravated robbery. She's also spent time in jail for a bad check, marijuana, making a terroristic threat, and criminal mischief. Again, we're still waiting to hear the cause of death and motive.
And Jonathan's family tells us they've made the funeral arrangements for the boys. Services will be on Monday at 1 p.m. at Garden Oaks Baptist Church on North Shepherd. He'll then be laid to rest at South Park Cemetery in Pearland.
Andy Kahn is the city's crime victims advocate, and Andy was with Jonathan's grandmother when they got the bad news that it was Jonathan's body found in a ditch. Andy, thank you very much for coming in tonight.
You bet, Mike.
How did the word come in that the worst possible outcome had come true?
Well, we had gotten briefed by local law enforcement, and basically I was with the family and the extended family trying to keep them secluded so that they wouldn't hear it until HPD's homicide came over, and of course it was absolutely devastating. But at that time there was still some glimmer of hope that perhaps the body was not of Jonathan, so we went with that ray of hope. And of course, we now know what happened. This is just absolutely shocking. And for the past week, Jonathan became Houston's boy and every parent's nightmare as well.
Yes. The grandmother, of course, had said that during news coverage of while they were searching and hoping for the best, that her faith had already been tested many times before in her life, but never tested like this. And ultimately, the worst possible outcome takes place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is everybody's nightmare. You have a young boy who's home and kidnapped and abducted by basically a stranger, not a family member. This is so rare, Mike. I spent hours trying to see if there's any other similar cases. We could only come up with one other case involving a female defendant who kidnapped and abducted a child that was not of their own or a relative in this country. This is an extremely rare anomaly to happen. It's going to be very interesting to see whether the district attorney's office seeks the ultimate punishment because you're dealing with a capital murder, someone who does have an extensive criminal background, and we'll be waiting to see whether they do seek the death penalty in this case.
And of course, in capital murder cases, the only two options for the jury is either life in prison or
life
capital,
without parole or the death penalty in this particular case. This is absolutely devastating for this family. They just feel like they've been put through the ringer on such an emotional roller coaster, and it's just the beginning of many trials and tribulations that they're going to have to go with.
Now, we want to point out that, of course, a person in this country is innocent until proven guilty, but Mona Nelson has been charged with capital murder, and the strange thing about it is homicide detectives during the news conference say most of the time we can find out a motive. But in this, they're baffled. And by the way, they're heartbroken as well. They said this is one of the worst cases they've seen in many, many years.
The only other case that I can recall in Houston's history over the last 2 decades, of course, was the Ertman Pena case with the 2 girls that has touched the hearts of Houston. And Jonathan Foster has galvanized all of Houston together and hoping and seeking that, of course, the young boy would return, disappearing on Christmas Eve, and then, of course, finding out the worst, and now finding out that a female defendant allegedly abducted, kidnapped him, and murdered him. It's just absolutely frightening and nightmarish.
And we want to make one thing perfectly clear before we wrap it up here. Again, during the news conference, homicide investigators stress that the best they can tell right now, she acted alone. But the other thing is that they dropped another bombshell, and that their suspicion is that this is not the first time that this lady has killed before.
Well, it looks like this was incredibly methodically planned and thought out as well. And the fact that she became, one of the main reasons that she was eventually caught and apprehended was because of the video surveillance on this as well. And someone that's been in and out of prison, has, a history, you've got some violence with an aggravated robbery. I'm sure they're going to be looking wherever she's lived all over the country to see if they can find any similar pattern as well. And I don't think we've heard the last of any potential suspects in her case.
No, not at all. But it's a horrible way to end 2010. We'll see what justice brings in 2011.
We saw the worst of humanity and the best of humanity with all the Texas EquiSearch people, all the citizens that came out and offered their support for the family, and that's what we got to give our ray of hope for.
Right. Again, Andy, I know you're always involved with crime victims. You happen to be with the grandmother. Thank you so very much for coming in and talking to us.
You bet, Mike.
All right, sir. Melinda back.
Now police are looking back at other missing children cases in the area to see if they could be related to this murder investigation.
I've worked in the homicide division for 14 years, and this is the worst case that I've been a part of.
Why 12-year-old Jonathan Foster was killed is still unknown, but police believe murder suspect Mona Yvette Nelson is a predator, and this isn't the first time she's acted on that impulse.
Do I believe she's done it before? Yeah, I do. I don't believe she began and ended with the abduction of Jonathan Foster. I don't.
The 44-year-old apartment maintenance worker was described by those that encountered her as a bizarre person and in her own world. Cops call her methodical.
She decided when the time was right, and she swooped down and took him when she felt it was right. And apparently she saw the opportune moment.
Investigators say Nelson knew the person that lived with Foster's parents. That's how she came into contact with the boy.
She acted alone in this crime of her own disregard for human life. She decided to take Jonathan Foster out of our world.
Now, if you have a child that wants to go down the block and go to the local store and get a candy bar, in today's society, it's probably a good idea for you to go with them.
Bob Walcott is executive director for the Laura Recovery Center for Missing Children. He says it's important to prepare your child for the worst.
You scream, you kick, you yell, you bite, whatever it takes to get away. If there's something happening, or, if you feel that threatened by a situation, you do everything you can to get away from there.
The Foster murder investigation will now have search agencies like the Laura Recovery Center take missing children cases and look for a possible link. Mike McGuff, 39 News.